What are you still salty about? My parents kept talking about getting rid of their piano, but weren't ready to. I said that, since it was the one from my childhood, that I grew up playing, and I didn't have one, I'd like to have it. They could let me know when they were ready to part with it. They said it was too much of a pain to move. We lived a block away. You could have literally rolled it out the back door and up the street, and they didn't want me paying a mover. So I said no worries. I'll wait as long as you like. This went on for a year. It came up almost once a week. I'd ask if I could just come get it. They said no, they weren't ready. No worries. They'd bring it over sometime. Then one day I came over and the piano was gone. I asked what was up, and they said my cousin, who lives 3 hours away, had been looking for one for her daughters. So my dad had loaded it up into a truck he rented and personally delivered it. My parents claimed they didn't think I was interested in it. One time I took a piece of cake to school as my lunch food. It was all I had for that day. One idiot decides, because it's cake I have to share it. I explain that it's all the food I brought for this day and thus will not be sharing. He suddenly gets up and smashes his hand into my cake. I try to protect it, but I was too slow. It also happened after the cafeteria closed, so I had nothing to eat that day. I'm still mad about that and hope that guy has a terrible job now and is unhappy. Not that I hold grudge or anything. My parents bought my brother a guitar for Christmas. He learned chords over a few weeks. Then when he realized it would take actual effort to learn, he quit and it went into a corner of his room and just started gathering dust. A few years later, when I was about 9 years old, I decided I wanted to learn the guitar. So I borrowed it, restrung it, and started learning. By an amazing coincidence, around the same time my brother decided the guitar was now his prized possession, and by a further amazing coincidence, he only ever felt the urge to practice whenever I wanted to use the guitar. One day, I'd saved up my money for a couple of months and bought myself a Beatles songbook. I got it home and went and grabbed the guitar. Of course, my brother suddenly decides he needs to play a C chord over and over. So, I protest to my parents. I'm using the guitar. He only wants it to stop me using it. He hadn't touched it in 3 years until I got interested. I was the one who paid to have the guitar set up and paid for the strings, so can they please just make him leave me alone for a freaking hour so I can try out some of the songs in my new songbook? They tell me, no, that it's my brother's guitar. It belongs to him. So I have to give it to him. Now, this is the part I'm still really freaking salty about. I give the guitar to him, and he asks to borrow my new songbook. I tell him to frick right off. So he whines to my parents and they make me lend it to him, because after all, I can't do anything with it without a guitar. Yeah, it's my brother's guitar. It belongs to him. So I have to give it to him. It's my songbook. It belongs to me. But suddenly none of that counts and I should be reasonable. Part that makes me even saltier. I asked for my own guitar for Christmas and was told no, because we spent hundreds on one for your brother and he never learned it. We are not making that mistake again. When I was like 8 years old I came into possession of a comic book. I don't remember what it was. All I can remember is how excited I was to open it up to read it. I had an older cousin who was around 14, and he demanded he read it first, even though it was mine. We got into a huge fight about it, and for some reason all the adults who were around said I should share with him and let him read it first. So I begrudgingly let him. I sat across from him as he read the comic, and I swear he took his sweet ass time. He took forever reading, and I waited patiently for him to finish. As soon as he finished, he got up, walked it over to me, and just as I reached out to read it, he ripped it up and shredded it into pieces while laughing. To say I was mad is an understatement. If I had a knife on me at that exact moment I swear I would have stabbed him. This was over 30 years ago, and anytime I run into the same cousin I say hi, but immediately mutter to myself, you comic book ripping motherfucker. It's insane how much these little things stay ingrained in us. My mother once deliberately scheduled a family trip to Disney World so that I couldn't go. Being stiff $900 worth of pay, I was working for a bish who owned a cleaning company, and she drove a E-Class Mercedes-Benz sedan. Found out she had a history of stiffing pay from her employees. Frick you. My freshman year of high school, I overheard my friend asking his girlfriend if she brought him donuts she had previously promised. Being me, I chimed in and said, yeah, where are my donuts? Not expecting to actually get any. Well, fast forward a couple weeks to after I had forgotten about this incident. She brought me an entire bag of mini chocolate nets. Since it was an entire bag, I decided to share with my friends at lunch. This was my mistake. All was going well until one of my other friend's girlfriend took the entire bag into the girls' bathroom and ate all of them. All of them. I'm still salty. This happened 5 years ago. Built a website for my uncle under a very tight deadline and requirements. We had agreed on a cut rate, family and friends discount. He was trying to get elected as a judge, put in ridiculous hours on it, met the deadline, asked to be paid. He ghosted me. Couple years later he tries the same thing, lost the election BTW, for a startup venture, gave him a ridiculously high rate, and demanded full payment up front, ghosted me again. When I see him, which is rare, he makes no mention of it. He was also disbarred instead of going to jail, because he got involved in a scheme. Naciel all the way on this. Frick him. Never liked him. When someone stole the freaking brakes off my bike in high school. Freaking Sam's Club. In 1997. I went there with my grandmother as she shopped. I really liked the store, so I went back a few weeks later. The guy stopped me at the door and requested to see my membership card. I explained I didn't have one and that I would like to become a member. They said I can't go in unless I'm a member. I asked them what I need to do to become a member, and they say there are forms to fill out. I ask if I can go in and get the forms, and they said once again that I can't go in unless I'm a member. I have never been to a Sam's Club since, and never will go to a Sam's Club, ever. Frick them. I was one of roughly 150 people banned from Guild Wars 2 for exploiting a broken crafting recipe that the devs put in the game. Essentially, you could create a 25 silver item for 10 silver using the most common ingredients in the game. The global auction house crashed over the week and they banned everyone who used it. A full, permanent ban with no warning for their mistake. I'm still salty. A company contacted me about interviewing me for an internship and then rejected me after that. I wasn't even planning on applying to them. I was jumped by 5 kids in 4th grade, and then my school solely punished me by trying to expel me. The kids' parents tried to sue. It was a huge deal. I'm still mad off that I got in trouble for being jumped, while the other 5 kids walked away. Why did the kids' parents try to sue? I don't know. Went to a bake sale in middle school. The girl running it told me a cupcake was $1, so I gave her a 5. She gave me back 3 ones. I told her so, and she stared blankly at me and then said, yeah, I gave you 3 $1 bills. I don't know if she was a moron or just wanted to steal from me, but my inability to confront people when I was younger really fricked me over there. Wherever that girl is, frick her. There was a magazine I used to read when I was about 9 or 10, and they had a competition where you could send in names for some mascots they had created. If your name was chosen, you won a cool Lego set. I sent in a name for one of them, and in the next issue, they announced that I was one of the winners. Not only did I not get the Lego set, but that mascot didn't appear at all for the rest of the magazine's print run. Went on a mission trip with an acquaintance and his church. It was a 2-week home building trip to a poorer mountain area of Kentucky. I knew one of the girls in the group already. We'd fooled around a bit a few weeks prior. Heavy petting and making out and whatnot. But we were pretty young yet. 14 or 15. I spent the night before we left on the trip at the acquaintance's house. He convinced me it'd be a smart idea for us both to get condoms, as these trips can get weird. Except, he left his at home and told everyone I brought condoms because I expected this girl to put out, and that was the only reason I came. And so I was treated like a scummy horny kid. Worst part is, I didn't know that this had happened. I just knew that no one in our group would talk to me unless they had to, so I spent 2 weeks, hundreds of miles from home, with no one I knew to talk to or hang out with. So I ended up spending my free time walking around the area around the school we were staying at in this poverty-stricken area of Kentucky. Luckily the locals were really nice, and I made friends with these guys that were a bit older, in their 20s, and they introduced me to the wonderful world of cheap drink and crappy weed. When I was in 7th grade, my 2 younger brothers cornered me with a pair of safety scissors and basically tried to take my allowance. This caused me to yell, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I lost my computer privileges for a month. Years later I came to visit home, and my youngest brother, who was involved in the previous incident and was now in 7th grade himself, calls my dad, and before my dad can say anything I hear my brother screaming, "Where the frick are you? I'm going to be late for practice." And my dad apologized to him. My friend on Facebook that spoiled Star Wars The Force Awakens for me the day it came out. Any person who said yes to my wedding and then didn't show. So much of the event was just going around introducing myself or my wife to new people that it's a blur, and I totally brush it off when people mention feeling bad they couldn't make it, because I honestly don't remember everyone who was/wasn't there, but there were 2 who said yes and just flat out ghosted, one of whom was my only consistent friend from elementary school through college, and I've never spoken to him since. My brother sold my Gamma Boy Color and copy of Pokemon Yellow to GameStop when we were kids. I love him, but I'll never let him forget. My ex buying me a kitten as a joint Christmas/birthday present, then taking it with him when we broke up cause he paid for it. I loved that cat, you asshole. Percy Jackson. I went to a party with a good friend of mine. We've known each other since 3rd grade, on the 4th of July with people she works with. We all get pretty wasted, but my friend is especially wasted and starts throwing up. One of the guys she works with, that she also has a little fling with along with me, and another guy get her back to her place and I go home for the night. So next morning she texts me and asks me if I've seen her watch. Now she's had this watch for a few years and I know it's a very nice vintage watch that her mother gave to her. I told her I haven't seen it, and she tells me that the guy that she's having a fling with said that he saw me take it off her wrist. I tell her I'm sorry, but I didn't, and I haven't seen it. Later that day the guy finds the watch in the car of the guy who drove us home. She's still seeing this guy, but I personally don't like him, since he accused me of taking my very good friend's very expensive watch. How antidepressants affect my junk. In school we got a test which I suppose came down to basically writing whether an object emitted light or received light. Because I'm at least as smart as Batman, I usually just filled out these tests mindlessly. But when there was a question about whether a photo camera emits light, I was stumped. What if it was a trick question? The little drawing of a 90s photo camera had a flash on top of it. So I said it emits light and added to the notes yes, but only if it flashes. That was marked as wrong, because I was scored on the check boxes, not on my actual answer. I confronted the teacher about this, and she merely remarked that you already have a test score of the 9th of May 10. Why would you make a fuss over this? And because I'm not good at rebuttals, unlike Batman, I just blanked. It is incredibly petty, but to this day I'm upset over this. I had forgotten about it for a year or so now until this post brought it up, and I blame you, Guardinks Cross, for ruining my life. I saw this one guy litter out of his car window and I confronted him about it. He turned crazy on me yelling something about police raping dogs, so I backed down. Now every time I see litter I kind of hate myself for not picking up his trash or keeping on him about throwing trash out and making someone else take care of him. So I'm salty about myself for being a pussy every time I see litter. Someone stole my iPad Nano. Why didn't Harry use the Elder Wand to repair his Phoenix Feather Wand in the last Harry Potter movie? That would have taken an additional 2 seconds. The Last Airbender movie. This is pretty petty, but one time a neighbor's husband was back from deployment, and I lent him my car for a couple of days. He drove it 250 miles and returned it empty. The dash showed 6 miles to empty. This was like 10 years ago, and that family is long gone from my life. But I'm still salty about it. That men don't nearly have as many options for clothing as women do. I like to dress up and look good, and it bothers me that women can have 3 floors of clothing options in a department store, and it will just have a corner for men's clothing. I made salmon for my 5-person family. I'm 15, about 8 pieces of fish plus one I put to the side for my lunch the next day at work. My dad ate like 3 pieces for his first plate and specifically singles out the salmon I said I made for my lunch and takes it for seconds. Didn't even say thank you to me for making dinner the 5th time that week. Didn't understand why I was upset. Still love you though, Dad. My 7th grade English teacher accused me, in front of the class, of having copied a short story that I had written. It wasn't even loosely based on anything I had read prior to that. It was just well written. That episode led to a lot of mistrust of teachers thereafter. It's been about 30 years, but I still get steamed up when I think about it. When I was 16, I had a job at Taco Bell. I busted my ass, came home reeking of onions, and suffered all of the usual indignities associated with working in fast food. On the upside, I was able to save enough money to buy a car, a 1978 Honda Civic. It wasn't much, but it was mine. One night, just a few weeks later, I was driving some friends to a restaurant for dinner when lady turning left didn't yield and plowed her land yacht right into the driver's side of my car. Luckily, no one was hurt, but my car was totaled. The other driver was in the country illegally working as a nanny for a rich Beverly Hills surgeon. She had his son in the car with her and had taken him to the local amusement park. She had no insurance. My insurance was just liability. She fled the country. I wanted to sue the surgeon for the damage his employee did to my car while on the job. My dad wouldn't even consider it, and as a minor I couldn't do it. Took me another year to get enough money to buy another car. That was 35 years ago, and I'm still salty. The fall of Constantinople. My best friend of 3 years turned out to be a pathological liar, and I haven't talked to him in 4 months. I could tell so many stories of his stupid lies. BP's oil spill. I will literally never get gas there. I'm still salty about EA's response to Battlefront 2's horrendous microtransaction model, which is subsequently the most downvoted comment in Reddit history. I was on a road trip from California to Florida with 2 female acquaintances, a male, sometime in 2013. Coaxed them into letting me drive to Joshua Tree. Halfway through the day hike, they complained they had no cell service, and we had to continue our drive. Stopped in Flagstaff. It snowed. Wanted to drive an hour back in the opposite direction to see the Grand Canyon with snow, but these 2 didn't want to waste time, so we could stop in some backwoods town in Texas to see some family. Super awkward. Finally, the cherry on top is that these ladies refused to drive in traffic /rain/snow/ over 2 hours at a time / if the sky was blue, etc. So I ended up driving most of the way. When they did drive, I couldn't sleep because I was white knuckled the entire time. Mostly salty about the Grand Canyon thing. At my 8th grade award ceremony, the top 10 people in the class were ranked. I was ranked 4 out of 32. This was before report cards came out, and I was happy enough about my 4th place ranking, and I also received a little bit of money for it. After we graduated, we still had to come to school to take a high school level exam. That was later on than all the other exams. On our very last day we got our report cards, and it said on it that I got a 60 on my math final. I started crying, wondering how it could possibly be, especially because I was taking the high school level math class and the final was based on the 8th grade level math class. I gathered all my courage and asked my teacher if I could see my final, because I didn't understand how I did so bad. She goes, "No, you can't, sorry." I then tear up and say, "I just don't understand how I got a 60. She looks at me and goes, "What? You didn't get a 60? Now I'm relieved but also confused. And she takes out her gradebook, and it turns out I actually got a 96. She entered the grade wrong on the report card. The same report card that was used for determining the ranking I mentioned earlier. It just seemed so annoying that nobody double checked anything. Especially when these teachers knew me and should have been alarmed when seeing the 60 on the report card. I still think about it and get frustrated, but it is what it is. Pluto. Teen Titans Go is the most popular show currently on Cartoon Network. A girl I was seeing faked leaving the country. When she returned, she informed me that she got back together with her ex-boyfriend and never actually left. This happened when I was in 5th grade. Primary school. I don't know if it's the same everywhere, but in Canada, in primary school, we had one teacher for math, French, religion, everything. This teacher was assigned with roughly 20 students and created a class/group. So in 5th grade, there was 2 classes. Me and half of the 5th graders were with Jane Francois, and the other half were with, let's call her, Pauline. In the middle of the school year, both classes got an activity where we read a theater play, not playing it, reading it. We got our text, and we read it, still putting a bit of acting in our voices, because we were in 5th grade, and in school, and children. Our teachers got creative, and found variations of popular stories. This is the start of the salt. Our class got a really odd story with Miss Devil dating N Devil. Something we never heard about and really boring. Course we are 5th graders. Not much dating going on. But Pauline's class. They got Snow White and the 7 Squeegee. Their story was way more funny and interesting than our. Even saltier. Our story took 30 minutes to read, while theirs was 2 hours long. That's only the tip of the iceberg. There was an event for that. On a day, parents would come to school to listen to our performance. Because we only needed 30 minutes, we would read it in the school hours. But they had a whole after hours event. Parents would come and hang out for a while. They had food. Us. Nothing. Parents would come and go, while theirs got a freaking brunch. Not only this was unfair, but we had to help them. They needed decorations for their brunch. So we crafted paper string decorations for them and their stupid play. Not only our freaking show sucked, but instead of putting time to improve it, we used help the other class improve their already super awesome event. It has been 8 years, and I'm still jealous to this day. Unfair. Let's see. In 3rd grade my teacher told me to shut up when I corrected her. She had given me a deduction for spelling lizard correctly, adamantly insisting that it was spelled lizard until she pulled out a dictionary. My art teacher in 9th grade gave us a pretty basic assignment. Paint a color wheel. Just a ring of circles with the primary colors. I loved art, so I finished in a couple minutes and painted a cartoon wolf in the middle of the circle. To this day, it's one of the best cartoon animals I've ever done. She put a big red X through it and took 20 points off my grade. I still can't believe an art teacher would punish me for creativity and destroy my art in the process. Oh. I moved in 2nd grade and my school got an awesome jungle gym later that summer. We previously had old, rotting, wooden playscapes that caused injuries on the reg. Then, when I changed to middle school a year later, my elementary school did the same thing. My senior year, I broke my foot, and my English teacher wouldn't let me go to the nurse. Then my math teacher railed me for being late after gingerly limping there. When I got it put in a walking cast, my pants would cover it so only my bare toes stuck out. My principal stopped me and angrily asked why I was only wearing one shoe, in a what's the matter with you kind of way. His name was Principal Barefoot. Later it turned out that my doctor hadn't used enough of the casting material for my cast and it warped. When they cut it off, the saw heated up and burned a perfect line into my flesh everywhere it went. In closing, I'm salty about being raised in a hick town. Small towns are where people that suck go to do just that. I was in 3rd grade, hanging out with my cousin and some guys during recess. I was the only girl in the group. My cousin and this boy start throwing insults at each other until it escalates into a physical fight. I was worried someone would get hurt, so I tried to put myself between them and break up the fight. The teacher saw us and thought I was one of the people who started it. He made us all stand by the wall in front of the entire school and slapped our faces. He also shamed me for not acting like a girl and being in fights. I'll never forget the rage I felt. I was doing the gig economy back in college. A girl in my college program was doing the same gigs. She started telling people I was hitting on her, telling sexually explicit stories to make her uncomfortable, and stalking her so that they would hire her instead of me. I barely knew the girl, never talked to her, and definitely didn't do the things I was accused of doing. Found out when I called a few of the old venues up asking why the gigs had dried up. The business owners and crews I worked with were really confused because they knew I'd never do anything like that. but just excommunicated me because she said so. Okay, this is going to be long and so weird, but I'm obviously so salty, so prepare yourself. I used to work at the front desk of a dorm, and with that responsibility we have emergency contact information, everyone's room numbers, and all sorts of sensitive information. We were also responsible for calling the ambulance/police if someone had alcohol poisoning, that is, every weekend because it's college. On to the story in question. I was working, my shift was almost over, and an ambulance was called because this girl was so wasted she couldn't get inside. Friends were coming in and out saying she can't keep water down, so the workers inside knew it was bad. Other workers were handling it, so I was shooing people away from the window so they didn't stare. My replacement showed up. I gave her the rundown. A girl is outside. It's being taken care of. Make sure no one is crowing/staring. The next week I get a call from my boss to meet with her. The semester had just begun, so maybe she was seeing how I was doing. Nope. Apparently someone had said the day following the incident, we will say Sunday afternoon, a person said me, by description and name, had pointed and laughed at the girl who had been too wasted to work. Since I hadn't done that, I began to tell her reasons why I hadn't done that. It's a breach of FERPA. That's insensitive. And I hadn't actually seen the girl in question. I then paused and said, wait, I actually didn't work Sunday, because I didn't. She asked if I had been at the desk anyway. Of course I hadn't. Who goes to work when they aren't working? The meeting was finished. I wasn't punished, so I had assumed she believed me. My semester review comes up. She gives me great reviews all around. Calls me a star employee, and she couldn't have survived the semester without me. My performance has been top quality except for that one incident at the beginning of the semester. I froze. I hadn't thought about it in a month or so. I had assumed it had been stated as incorrect. Luckily my evaluation ended soon after, so I could lay down and process it. A week later over winter break she calls to fire me. No idea if it was because of what she had assumed I did or what, but I'm forever bitter. Side note, who says they can't do something without you then fires you? I don't understand. I never will. Forever salty. Haram. The ending to Penny Dreadful's final series. Writing and crappy PR like that can get right in the bin. Kid would come around my neighborhood and bully me all the time. Back in my day it wasn't something you talked about. It was just life. One day I'm with a cousin and kid comes over to bully us along with two of his friends. I've had enough of it, and I don't want my cousin to get bullied too. So I grab a 2x4 that was on the porch and threatened him and his friends with it. They call my bluff. So I swung and hit him in the shoulder. They ran off. They came back half an hour later and caught us by surprise and snatched the 2x4 out of my hand as I went to get it again. Then threatened me with it. I cried. They let me go. I told my father about it, and he confronted the bully in the crowd of people he was with. They all said I was the one that started the whole ordeal with the 2x4. So I was in trouble. This was the first time I stood up to a bully and it backfired in some way. Every single time in my life I stood up to a bully it backfired in some way. Usually by me getting beat up or getting in trouble for it. And it never stopped the bullying. So every single time I hear/read stories about how standing up to bullies is the solution, I get really salty about it. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can watch together.